I put on something. I put on a t-shirt that was like vaguely Halloweeny.
I did not.
You did not.
It's because I got like one Halloween t-shirt which I'm wearing tomorrow.
Where is that? Oh, she's under you. That's fine.
Of course she is.
Just want to know. Just so she's. There's a cat in here somewhere.
Best girlfriend.
Yeah, tiny and so small she can fit under your chair. So this is the special Halloween episode. As you can see, we've got all of our Halloween. Oh no, we've done nothing. In fact, we've got a Little Mermaid LCD wrist game behind us, which is the polar opposite of Halloween.
We could slide Wolverine out.
I mean, he's fuming there as well.
Bloody bonkers.
That's the Age of Apocalypse one where his fist fell off.
It's unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah, Wolverine, AOA, where's my fist? Every morning. Oh, where's my fist?
Oh, bloody hell.
Every day.
Friend dinner.
Fancy that, my fist falling off. Yeah, so today for the Halloween special, we're going to do the top 5 horror games, a hidden gem, we've got 2, and then we're just going to have just a discussion about it, because I think...
Well, you say hidden gems, and I've got some honourable mentions as well.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff here, because our whole idea for this, for the whole Halloween thing, we thought, when people talk about their favourite horror games, it's always, you know, you've got the Resident Evils, the Silent Hills, so on. By the way, Silent Hill 3... My brother was telling me that if you adjust the difficulty, it's not just the, like, you know, you get less items, the monsters are more difficult. The puzzles change. Really? So apparently, like, at the start of it, he said they put it on hard mode just to play it, see what it was like, because my brother's a big Silent Hill fan. And in one of the first puzzles, like, putting books in order and it's on symbols on them. You put that on hard mode, that puzzle is massively expanded, and it's putting, like, the complete works of Shakespeare in order. Wow. That is tough. So, yeah, he was like, oh, I didn't expect that. But it's quite interesting. Fair play, that's difficult.
Henry I, Henry II. Why don't we?
There we go. And I got a Pac-Man ghost there as well. So now it's Halloween.
We'll put Elvira up there, and you'll just have to believe it.
She is. There's an Elvira pop. What are they called? Pop vinyls? Rock? I don't know. Yeah.
There's probably loads of variations.
So we're going to go through just a load of recommendations for people who, you know, a lot of mine, for reasons we'll get into, are free games and ones that are sort of
It's because you're on the dole.
It's because I'm on the Cindy Crawford's Got a Mole. Yeah, with just essentially games that aren't Alien Isolation. So
3 minutes and already Alien Isolation's come up.
Okay, so should we do a top 5? Do you want to do this? Is in no order. So go on, you start because you're the guest.
Yeah, I'll start.
You're the Mark Kermode and I'm the Simon Mayo.
I found.
Mainly because this is my house. Oh, there we go.
There we are. It's actually a really good movie as well. It's got big ones.
Alright, that's right, yeah. 2 Big Pumpkins. Generally a song she's released.
Amazing. What a woman.
Still a burner. She's 60.
I did have a kind of a, before we get into the top 5, I did have a kind of a shower thought that if, I'm not sure whether this is really going to hold together, but if any video game, pretty much any video game were a movie, it would be a horror movie. Because, you think about it, like, Super Mario and stuff like that. Well, most games involve mass murder, let's face it, for a start.
Especially Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, and then, like, you know, Mario, you're literally jumping on weird monsters' heads and making them explode. You got, like, well, you know, like games like Fortnite and stuff like that, just pure massacre. Tetris, like a sense of just the constant tension, the sense of confinement, the inevitable demise,
the inevitable failure.
Yeah.
So even games like you've got like The Sims and stuff like that, which never ends. Just and SimCity just.
So the only way they can end is through disaster or horror.
Yeah.
And
happy birthday.
And then you got someone like, you know, like the Tomb Raider reboot, where, you know, she's meant to be just this kind of just an archaeologist sort of thing, ends up slaughtering everyone, headshots, everything, stabbing, slashing their throats from behind, all of it.
Yeah, it's true actually.
Yeah. So
Pac-Man being chased by ghosts.
Yeah.
Everything apart from racing games, really.
Pretty much. But even then, they're going to end in disaster at some point. Unless it's Gran Turismo, in which case you can't actually crash.
Oh, a flat out 2, or any damage to the cars. A flat out 2, where you literally have to smash into like a wall and fly through the window a lifeless doll to land on a massive dartboard that's 60 feet high.
Everything is horror. So we might as well just talk about favourite games.
Yeah, okay, so Tetris.
So, top 5 then. Should we go one each?
Yeah, go on then.
Back and forth? Am I starting?
Yeah, go on.
these are in no particular order.
Yeah, same here.
Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice.
You like this game.
I was considering whether this is a horror game or not, but I really think it is actually.
I assumed it was more of a psychological horror.
It is,
Like, yeah.
but it is horrifying and genuinely scary at times because. But it is psychological horror really because so much of it is to do with her mental state and how that affects literally the kind of environment around her, which is amazing. I'd call it a kind of quite a responsible use of horror, if you like.
Okay.
So it's really using her state of mind as a way of twisting reality around her, and that fits into the puzzle sort of thing. So you're having to distinguish between different realities, which is a really cool idea, without kind of cheapening the whole mental health aspect of it. And also, it's like really good fun as well, and you get to kill some crazy monsters. There she is. Yeah. Yes, you can eat my notes.
That's what Bart Simpson used to say, isn't it?
He's eating my shorts, I think. And it's very deep and subjective, which I like, and beautiful to look at.
Sniffing your crotch. Sniffing your crotch.
Actually, can't imagine what it would look like on Switch, but because
It is on Switch, isn't it? I think that's where I'll probably get it because it was a really tasty looking game, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's something you need to play with headphones. It even says at the start, "Play this with headphones," because it uses the. Really
I'll make Barry headphones.
Yeah, yeah, co-op with Barry headphones. Yeah, and it's well written. The only down point I'd say about it would be that song at the end, which I mentioned. I think,
where you said it's just like, awful lyrics.
Really weirdly sentimental song at the end. But other than that, I mean, the end is like about 8 hours long, maybe.
The key length.
Yes, and it genuinely feels like a descent into a kind of hell because by the end of it, it's just arms reaching out walls and stuff. Yeah. So and the combat's really, really tasty,
Meaty, satisfying.
Yeah, really meaty and satisfying. So yeah, good game. You thought that was solid. You thought it was solid,
and yet
it's
a sheet of paper. So yeah, that's a good choice actually because I've always wanted to play Senua's Sacrifice, and it's just one of those ones that has just slipped me by, like Ori of the Blind Forest. Stuff you mentioned that I think, I'll have to do that, and then yes, I never play it. She'll be thrown out as she carries on, little tinker. So I'm like I said, no order. Top one for me, Seventh Guest. Because that game is just still one. Everything about it. Like, I would say I listen to the soundtrack through like once a week.
Yeah.
Because it's only about 20 minutes.
Have you got it on vinyl by any chance?
No, I did contact George Sanger, who did it for an interview I did for Games Freezer, and I did say, can you release it on vinyl? And he said he was going to contact his record company. So
really?
If it is released, I did it. I found it when I played it as a kid. I found it really spooky because of the Henry Staff voiceovers and the fact that you are in this haunted house and solving these weird puzzles, being sort of taunted by an unseen antagonist.
What kind of game is it? Is it point and click? Or?
Have you never played something like this?
Never played it. I would say I'll have to pick it up.
Friendships are such fragile things, aren't they?
I would say I'd pick it up, but I'm not really sure where to play it. I suppose it's
probably on Steam.
Is it on Steam?
Yeah, I got it on Steam. Yeah.
It's probably on GOG as well, isn't it?
It's probably about 5p, but it's the best 5p you'll ever spend because it's a FMV game. It's an early FMV. It was one of the games that kind of brought the CD-ROM gaming medium to the fore, because obviously it could only really be released on CD, 2 CDs, because of the amount of FMV in it. Of course. And it's got that early FMV thing.
1080p.
4K. It's an 8K version. Kill me now. But it's sort of You play this sort of floating entity in this house, walking around, and you see Henry Stauf. The introduction's amazing. Is this effectively a child killer who has brought these 6 guests to the house, and he's told them that whoever can work out who the 7th guest is gets all of their sort of dreams to come true. So of course there's all these sort of twisted, quite cerebral puzzles. Some harder than others. Some crap. But you
any illogical?
Nah. See, it's all kind of like, you know, you say you've got chess pieces and you've got to move these over there in a certain amount of moves, or there's like a blood maze, or there's an awful puzzle in the kitchen pantry where you've got to spell words out, and it's just using like old English. That's probably one of the worst puzzles in the game.
You haven't mentioned putting the works of Shakespeare and all that, have you?
No, that doesn't happen. Maybe on a higher difficulty. But I've always loved Seventh Guest. I still love the atmosphere. I think the introduction is one of the best to any game. Seventh Guest is a game that I play at least once a year, even if it's for like half an hour, just to like drink in the atmosphere of it. And then, that's a classic, and definitely worth a crack because you can get on Steam, GOG. It'll run, and it's going to be cheap now. It's going to be a couple of quid.
I suppose I should mention the fact that describe what Hellblade is like as an actual game. So it's a third-person adventure, hack and slash brawler type thing. So over the shoulder, some pretty simple combat, but really meaty.
Is it like melee combat? Or?
Yeah, all melee combat.
Because it's like a Viking.
Yeah, and you only have like one weapon throughout the whole game, so it's like, but it really feels good.
Is it a
really
conch or a
flows.
shoelace with like
Yes.
you put a hairspray on to make it hard?
Right, so my second game that I've got on this list is Maiden of Blackwater, which otherwise known as.
Hang on. This is going to get on my nerves, isn't it? Because this is the one that I should have bought upon release and didn't know it's massively expensive. That's the one, isn't it? That's the one. Yeah,
It's ridiculously
Is
expensive.
it Fatal Frame 3 or
5, I think.
5?
I think so.
Wow.
I've never played any of the other Fatal Frame games, or as I know here, Project Zero. But I think it's number 5, yeah. But so this is like third person perspective, and it's only on Wii U. And it was it's like a.
I've got that on here as well. So
Right, okay. I've got like a. So it is a kind of horror adventure. You basically there's a hub part to it, and then you go off into like the woods or whatever, or to look at it.
Is it modern day?
Yes, but you're exploring ancient places.
Yes.
This setting's really cool because it's like one of these. It's a suicide forest on a mountain sort of thing, and so it's really creepy. It's utterly drenched in like really thick atmosphere, and like a real sense of like melancholy because it's so much about suicide and stuff, and you learn about why these people kill themselves. But I think what really grabbed me about it at the time was that I'd just been playing Alien Isolation, and I was sick of hiding from monsters all the time, and what I really liked about it was the fact that when you see a monster, you have to quite aggressively like attack it in order to.
In the second one, which is the one I played, Project Zero 2, you took photos of them.
And of course with it on the Wii U, you're using you're using your Wii U pad thing.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
It's good for a while, but then you kind of just okay, let's just do it the normal way with the sticks because it's really awkward. But so you kind of have to take a perfect photo of the ghost in order to do it damage, sort of thing.
Yeah, this is exactly the second one.
So it's a really cool idea. It looked really nice and it was really atmospheric. And the camera thing with the Wii U pad was kind of it was really kind of nerve-wracking, but also quite fun. It was kind of gimmicky, but at least it was using the pad in an interesting way. Yeah,
but there was that, and Zombie U was another. That should be on the list as well. Zombie was another.
I think that's on my honourable mentions.
We'll touch on that.
But but I'd say
it was never ported to another console. Was
it? And it's a real pity. I'm surprised it didn't rock up on Steam or something because it'd be really cool. I think there was some slightly tedious, like skimpy costumes and stuff that you could make the characters wear. It's like
baffling in that genre.
It's completely unnecessary for.
It's always unnecessary.
Yeah, it is always unnecessary, but particularly in a game like that where really you already feel vulnerable enough. You don't need.
You're dealing with like really dark subject matter, and it just kind of just cheapens it by saying, you can see your boobs a bit. Look.
But it's got like I don't really care about storylines in games, but that one actually, because it had a lot of like mini stories. It was I don't know. It was
Did
really
you cry? Don't hit me.
No, not so much cry as
go.
Is more like, blimey O'Reilly. That's pretty tough going sort of thing, and it is genuinely really really scary, like really harrowingly like. Because you just know as soon as you because there aren't many ghosts. There's not like hordes of ghosts, but as soon as you see one, you've really got to deal with it. Otherwise, it's going to come at you, sort of thing. Pretty cool.
I'm really glad I don't own that game. I'm glad I don't own that.
It's only about 90 quid on eBay.
Do you know, I will... Maybe my favourite Christmas.
It might even be... It might even be cheaper than that now, I don't know. You know what Nintendo prices are like, they just go all over the shop.
I will have a little look all over the eShop. I'll have a I'll have a look at that later on. Cause
I think what made it rarer was the fact that it was only... The physical version was only available in Europe. I think in America you could only get it digitally.
I would like the physical version of that.
I think there was a demo of it on the Wii U eShop. If you fancy booting that bad boy up again.
Wow! My Wii U,
you will be surprised by how slow like the interface is on Wii U now.
Oh, really?
Going back to it, like because I did before I moved house, I logged in and I was like, it's cool because it's got like it's quite cutesy and it's got like music in the menu and stuff. But my god, it is so laggy. It's just so slow. You know how like snappy the Switch is. It's just, oh my god. It's painful.
So my next top 5 horror games, and I'm cheating here because it's effectively a loose trilogy, is 3 games by Harvester Games: Downfall, The Cat Lady, and Lorelai, which I'm playing at the moment actually, not right now, but I'm playing through. Because I think The Cat Lady is one of my favourite horror games of the last... as you'll see with these, there's not many modern ones, but have you heard of The Cat Lady or played it?
I've heard of it, but not
it's a really, really, really good sort of really atmospheric 2D, sort of almost a 2D adventure game, like a graphic adventure, but you can control it with a pad, and it's just really, the puzzles are really simple because you just lead in this woman, and the trilogy is sort of, each one deals with a certain aspect of the human psyche. So that what the Downfall is about a couple in like a failing marriage who turn up to this hotel. It was remade, it was released in 2009, and then last year they redid it in the same style as The Cat Lady, which is just really sort of stylized, dark, almost pen and ink sort of graphical style, with really tasty. And it's this couple that turn up this hotel. I think they went there when they were like young and in love, and they go back to kind of recapture it. And his wife goes missing fast. Like he's like, oh, hang on, darling, I'll check us in. Ding, darling, she is gone. And the whole thing is him.
So it's pretty much like what's that?
With Harrison Ford.
No, yes, like a Harrison Ford film. But also like Liam Neeson, Unknown as well. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, exactly the same thing.
Book into the hotel, gone, absolutely gone.
So yeah, it's the same thing. He's going on the hotel asking, and he's kind of doubting his own memories, and he sees her, and then he chases after her, and then she's gone, and it's just him losing his mind. And the second one, The Cat Lady, is just
Frantic. Is the Harrison Ford movie? Good movie. Roman Polanski.
Was it Roman Polanski?
Mm-hmm.
Good. The Cat Lady is about loneliness. So it's about a woman who's kind of just completely disengaged from society, and she spends a lot of time just kind of going into her own mind and sort of within herself, and that was really cool. And Lorelai is about it's more of a familial thing where it's like a young teenage girl who's getting her first job, and she's got a really bad family life, and again escapes into sort of a fantasy world of negativity.
I presume they're quite well written.
Yes, because it's very
it's
English as well. So it's just a lot of like really sort of softly spoken English accents. And in the Cat Lady, David Firth does a cameo as one of the darkest characters in a game I've ever seen. It's just there's a line.
Sound like David Firth.
There's a line in it because I recognise his voice straight away. And he's kidnapped this woman and he's tied her to a table. And just before he goes off to get a load of bleach to pour over her face, she starts screaming, and he just starts doing this really like sort of insecty dance and saying, screams are like music. And I thought, okay, I'm going to turn this off. But so yeah, the whole trilogy has just got this real, like you say, a melancholy darkness to it. But it's just because the puzzles, the puzzles are there to just sort of move you through it. They're not, it's like pick up this to use there, and it's all pretty basic stuff, but it's all about the atmosphere and the narrative, and they're not afraid to go dark, but not dark or gory for the sake of it. A lot of it's just inferred, and a lot of it is just the way the darkness is presented through dialogue. It's just the way things are structured that you think that's really horrible.
It's sort of like off kilter dialogue and stuff. Yeah.
So that would be my that would be one of my top 5 trilogies. So Harvester Games. I'll put links in the description of all these.
Good stuff. So I'm going to go for a AAA title next.
Alien Isolation?
No. It's going to be Actually, all the next
Oh, I was going to put down Bioshock, but I knew you would, so I didn't bother.
Yeah. Bioshock, yes. The original Bioshock. Because the games started leaning away from the atmospheric horror part. And then of course Bioshock Infinite really isn't a horror game at all. I mean, it's social horror, I suppose.
It's more of a social commentary than social.
Yeah. So that's cool, but yeah, I just liked. I liked it, how it reminded me of the atmosphere when I first played. When I first played it, I played it all the way through from start to finish on the first day. I think I must have started maybe midday or something. I finished like at midnight or something, and
That was a good day.
That was a very good day. That was an excellent day.
Funnily enough, sorry to interrupt, but the first time I played it was I'd just broken up with one of my girlfriends. Thanks for bringing it up, guys. And we were still living together, so I moved into the spare room while she was looking for somewhere.
You must have got hips deep.
I just thought I just need games, so I was playing stuff like Fallout 3 and things like that. But I got Bioshock, and I just remember like over the space of 2 or 3 nights, like coming up from work, having a really awkward meal with her, then going upstairs and just like playing the game myself for like 3 or 4 hours, and
it's interesting how you've still got joyful memories of that game, despite it being not a joyful time in your life. Because often you're like, if something harsh is happening in your life, you'll kind of associate something you watched or played in that time as like, oh, that time sort of thing. But actually, it was kind of almost an escape from.
It was a relationship that had to end, Rupert. And now she's missing in very mysterious circumstances.
It's weird. Yeah. So I like. There's even a point in it, which is a little bit of a scripted moment, where it uses some of the music from The Shining, which isn't on the soundtrack, obviously, because it wasn't written by the composer. But and that was the moment at which I think it's a bit where you go to the gardens, like
yes, that does ring bell.
The first time, which is really creepy anyway. Yeah, and I just think, like, the first time you encounter a Big Daddy and you're told you have to defeat him, and it's because it teases you up to that point. You see them around the place, and you're thinking they're just rock solid, and it's like, well, I hope I never have to face one of them.
Yeah, I hope I can hide.
Yeah, but then of course it just says, right, you've got to defeat him, and it's going to be really hard.
Am I right in thinking one of my lasting memories of it is you're walking down like a tube between 2 sort of domes, and you hear that kind of. And then you see her like holding hands walking around, and it doesn't even acknowledge you, they just kind of walk around the corner.
Yeah.
And I remember actually stopping in the game and thinking, I don't want to come across that again. I'm quite happy for that to be the closest I get, because that was horrible. Yeah,
and it's just, again, and it like the fact that I finished like 12 hours or whatever, and the ending isn't the best. The final boss is just a bit meh.
I can't even remember.
It's just a big dude. I mean, he's just like rock solid kind of. He just barges at you. He's like a Big Daddy, but just a bit tougher.
Well, it's like every fight with Bane and every Batman.
Then of course it's a classic thing where you've been like really hoarding ammo and stuff like that.
So you just.
And then I guess you got and thinking that you'll need it, and then at the end it's like, oh, I've got all the ammo. And it's like, yeah, and yeah, I just think, as I said, I mean, I think the sequel. I didn't like the sequel. In concept, because I didn't like the idea of being a Big Daddy, because it demystified it in a way.
Yes.
The Big Daddy was like a scary thing because it was so mysterious and weird. It's like, I don't know what that is, and like the fact that you became one, it wasn't something I was really clamouring for.
No.
And then the third one was much more narrative led.
There was a lot of problems with the third. You and I both really didn't click with it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that at all. Like with the third one, I found that the whole story of escorting this woman all the time, really, and the constant action, the constant sense of like being chased and having to get out of there, really ran up against the classic Bioshock gameplay of like going into places and taking fags out of drawers and stuff, which is what it's really all about.
Putting them in your purse.
Yeah, and and the gameplay is really good in Bioshock. It's a really solid shooter as well, like quite a tactical one where you're thinking, right, okay, I can use different I can like hypnotize that Big Daddy sort of thing to like fight alongside me, but I'm gonna have to kill him sometime. And like hacking got a little bit tedious, but yeah, it was okay. It was like Pipe Mania.
Yeah, it was. There's so many of those things in games, and like refraction puzzles as well. So
so Bioshock's different. Well, Bioshock's one of my favourite games.
Yeah, and it's one of those games that doesn't really age. You can go back. It was like released at that perfect time when it's 30 or 60 FPS, but the visuals will always kind of stand up.
Yeah. Well, the original was 30, and it was the PC port. The original PC port wasn't great because you could have it on 60 frames a second, so it'd be smooth, but all the animations were still 30 frames a second, so you have this weird juddery motion. So things would fly through the air and look like they're juddering through the air. It's really odd. When they did the remaster, which to be fair was free on PC, so can't argue with that. Everything was 60 frames, so it looks much better now.
It could be one that I played through again. I played through it twice, I think, but both times a fair while ago. It's
probably lost a bit of its impact now because you kind of know what's coming up. But the first time you play it, some of the weird people you encounter.
Slices.
Yeah, and the guy who's creating his masterpiece, I think his name's Cohen, Sander Cohen, that one, and he's trying to create his masterpiece, so you have to go and fetch these photos and put them in the frames, and it's just, and they're photos of his mutilated victims. It's very disturbing, but brilliant. Loved it.
I think I'm going to say now one that you... Well, I'll skip that one, but for me, another all-time favourite horror game is Blood. That is a game I will just go back to. I will play that at least once a year for the rest of my life. Just, again, first real love, just to hear those sound bites and just fire the double barrel shotgun.
Because we did the charity.
Yeah, 18
stream.
hours of Blood, which is absolutely fine.
It's amazing.
But yeah, that's another game. And oh god, the company that just did the re-release, that's going to really burn me. With a really cool animation and Night Dive Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah. With a really cool animation.
Yeah.
So Night Dive Studios did a remaster, and it's like £5 on Steam. And there's no need for everyone to play Blood at least once, especially when you can play 8-player split screen. Well, 16, but we had like 5, didn't we? But playing through that, I would do that again tonight. If you said Play Blood, I'd have no problem playing through the entire game.
Absolutely fine. It's such a good game.
So yeah, Blood, always worth a crack.
And of course you can find Jack Torrance in the maze.
Yes. The best game from 1997, the best using the build engine. That's the song I'm working on.
The best game from 1997. Isn't that when Super Mario 64 came out?
I stand by.
I don't think it was actually. I think that was 96. And
Yeah,
then,
'cause
then Ocarina was 98. So therefore, sandwiched in between, Blood.
Glasses firmly up the nose there from Rupert. Almost through the back of his head.
I pushed them so far into my eyes I couldn't see.
I'm just gonna. This was gonna be my next one. But
it's gonna be one that's on my
it's
list,
Left 4 Dead 2,
which is so on my list.
Yeah, I'll just cross that off.
I'm happy to talk about Left 4 Dead 2 for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, because I've played that a lot with my brother because it was split screen, and I loved the fact that I've played it through like a lot of different people, even people on into games, but like horror, like Davis, like boom, we'll play that. Played it with loads of people over the time, playing the same maps, never get bored of them. Really clever design. You have logged. Is it 10 hours on Steam of that?
It's about 900 hours. But that's nothing compared to some people. Like some people, because I played it a lot. I mean, it's 10 years old now, believe it or not. Amazingly. But
How long is 900 hours? I was going to use my phone, but we're recording.
I have worked it out before, and it's quite alarming, even that amount in however many years. I mean, I haven't played it in months, but
I haven't had a cigarette in months.
But there are people. I've seen people with 3,000, 5,000 hours on it, and I'm thinking that doesn't even compute. How you must have left it on? Like literally, you wouldn't have enough time in the day to do that. But people love it, and I can understand why, because it's so good. Because it's a first-person shooter. Really, it's online focused, because on PC, of course, you can't do split screen. Thank you. You
can
if you want it.
Yes.
But essentially, it's a co-op shooter. There is a deathmatch mode, and I've played it for about 10 minutes. Literally, I have played that for about 10 minutes, and I'm not into that. But
the
co-op mode is amazing. So you're like one of 4 survivors going around. You just got to get to the end of the level. And what's brilliant about it is the level essentially stays the same. The start and the end are in the same place. The basic route is the same, but especially in Left 4 Dead 2, that route will be slightly altered depending on how well you're doing. The monsters that come at you, the different types of zombie, they will change depending on how well you're doing. Or if someone, like, for example, if someone is lagging behind or something, you'll get a smoker, as they're known, and they'll lash you with their tongue and pull you in. If you're surrounded by zombies and stuff, you'll probably get a boomer coming out of you. So, really cool.
Are they the ones that just pummel you on the floor?
No, that's a charger.
They were little sausages in that game.
And they'll just bash you, and they'll take you away from the group. And then you got witches, of
Which
course,
are buzzing.
and they'll just be sitting there crying on the floor. And if you've got to kind of creep around them. If you disturb them, like shine a torch at them, then they'll wake up and they'll just one hit kill you. But yeah, that was a very good game.
Yeah.
Very good game.
And
And
again,
yeah, you'll get regular. So you get regular hordes. It's all about the sound design because it has different little musical cues depending on what's about to
Isn't the
happen.
horde like a?
Yeah, it's
and
like
then
it's like a kind of like a melodic whining sound,
Yeah.
and you'll know there's a horde coming. And it's one of those games where the better you get at it, the more fun it is, because especially if you've got a good group, because you'll be with people who know what they're doing, and they'll hear that everyone's hearing the sound at the same time, of course, and you'll see everyone like spread and get into like key positions in order to like survive it. But then of course there'll always be that one moment when you're kind of stuck somewhere, and it's like you just have to fight to the death sort of thing. Very good, love it, and it never gets boring because of this. Yeah, because of the fact that it slightly changes every time.
Yeah, just enough for it to sort of
Yeah.
always feel slightly familiar, but yeah, like I say, not just interested, not like you walk up, you know, if you walk to this spot, it'll trigger this, so you go over here and shoot that.
Yeah.
It's just, yes, it always, like I said, it always at some point just gets overwhelming,
Yeah.
or almost overwhelming, and you just sort of scrape through.
It's always possible. But yeah, it's like scripted, but the script is being made up as it goes along, essentially.
Actually, well, I was going to do this at the start. We got sidetracked before I do my final, my top 5. I recently had Zombieland Double Tap Road Trip to review, and I know we don't
I
want
was thinking about that when we were talking about Left 4 Dead.
I don't want to cut into our time too much to talk about good horror games because it's crap.
Not a good horror game.
Like, I would say that I haven't seen the film. I saw the first Zombieland, but this game, it should not be full price. It should not be £35-40. If it was a tenner or a £5 or a tenner, £8, even then I would think it's not worth it. But I wouldn't have felt so bad.
I played it for about half an hour with you, and
Yeah.
it seemed like an early access game on Steam that you probably wouldn't buy it. You'd probably
Get it in a bundle and never play
You'd
it.
probably get it in a bundle, yeah, try it out and just think, that's not very good. It's very average. There are a lot of much better twin-stick shooters.
It's the thing is, it's made by the same company. I think they're called High Voltage Games, who did Hunter the Reckoning and Hunter the Reckoning Wayward in 2002, 2004. And those games were like okay at the time, and this somehow feels worse than them. It's like they kind of got the license for Zombieland, dusted off the old engine, and then just made this. And you've got a lot of sounder-like actors doing the voices, and the dialogue is dreadful and constant, a constant irritating interruption on the game.
Oh, but it's got the real actors, isn't it?
No, of course
No,
it
it
hasn't.
hasn't.
And there's just lots of things that everything is just on the same plane. You never like. This is the best way to sum it up, right? It's 10 missions long, so it's a £40 game that can be finished in 2.5 hours. It's 10 missions. They're all the missions just overlap, and there's 2 escort missions where you're escorting the same person in the same suburban area. So it's like it's you know, you can do it in 2 hours. We were stopping to pour drinks and complain about how bad it was, feed the cat sort of thing, and it took us 2.5 hours. And I died once, and the only time I died was because for some reason my gun just stopped firing. And there was a lot of things like that.
Oh,
It's
so
kind
it's
of like
bugged as well.
it's like a bad version of Dead Nation. So you aim at the zombie, and your light of the laser is going through the zombie. You fire it, it doesn't hit, and then you'll kind of twitch it slightly, and then it will hit it.
It was a weirdly indistinct control mechanism.
Yeah,
I found.
it's
It was
not-
almost like it was trying to snap 2 enemies.
Yeah.
But of course, the problem is that because you've got so many enemies coming at you, it's like
just
constantly like twitching
wavering,
between
yeah.
them. It's like, just let me have full control. This
You-
is an analog stick.
You can't. There's a lot of things wrong with it. So none of the face buttons work on the controller. So all the triggers. So if you pick up any melee weapon, you have to use it till it breaks because there's no button to switch a weapon or to drop a weapon.
Wow.
So if you pick up, say you pick up, you always have a pistol with infinite ammo. So you pick up a shotgun and you think I'll keep that. You can't. You can't flick back to your pistol.
Even though you know you have a pistol because you're going to split back to it
When you
once
run out. So you can't flick between weapons. There's no dodge. And the problem with there being no dodge button or like dash out the way button or even like a melee attack just to, you know, the whole game is basically staying away from the horde and shooting them. So there's no point in having like an axe or a baseball bat because they might take more off them, but the last thing you want to do is get drawn into close quarters combat because you've got absolutely no defense against it. There was a point at the end where as we were going into the final like level, we get to Washington DC. There was a point in the level where Chris said, "Oh my God," and sat bolt upright, the guy I was playing with. So we're going up a ramp, and that was the highlight of that level because you spend so much time on just walking around on the floor, that the fact we went up a ramp, across a bridge and down was like the highlight. It's like, my God, something slightly different happened.
Like in Sonic Spinball.
Yeah, it's not good. I would, for the fact Dollhouse was going to be one of my worst games of the year, because that was again another half finished game that should not have been full price. But this is like it's got everything. It's got like the fact it's just too short, really awful dialogue that's really focused on, because of that the snappy, quicker dialogue is the thing in the film. And I saw that face on my peripheral, and the fact that there was placeholder dialogue in it, like it was a weird voice.
Oh my God, yeah, that was amazing. You told
Yeah,
me about
it was
that.
like Woody Harrelson's character was supposed to say something like, "I gotta thank my mom for making me a mean killing machine," but it was said in like an Amiga text-to-speech way.
Yeah.
And Chris was like, "What's that?" And I said, "That must have been placeholder dialogue." And the next mission, Woody Harrelson said the same thing, and he said it.
Someone doing an impression of Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, of Tallahassee, but it's terrible. And I haven't seen any other reviews for it yet, but I can imagine that there's no way anyone can give that game a good review. I mean, local co-op twin stick shooters on my thing, and it was bad.
Yeah.
Bad. So that's the review out of the way.
Good. Yeah, that's. It looked bad from what I played, and you
finished
braved your way through the entire thing.
I finished it with a frown on my face. I kept on saying, "We can turn this off if you want." And Chris said, "No, I want to see how much worse it gets, or if it gets better." And after 2 hours, it was done, and it just finishes. And then you unlock Rosario Dawson as a character, and she has the exact same moves as Woody Harrelson's character. And I thought, you can't expect people to want to play through this again. You can't. So.
Right, we've gone through Left 4 Dead 2, so we both got one left on our list. I
Yes,
suppose.
yes.
So yeah, you can. Do you want to fire away on your?
Yeah,
final one? I can see what it is.
This is a game. When I think about horror, especially when I lived with my parents and in my early 20s, I spent a lot of time playing games with my brother, horror games, because he used to, obviously, because I'm 7 years older than him, he grew up sitting there watching me play these games and like talking to him through and doing the voices of the characters. And when 5 Days a Stranger came out, which is Ben Yahtzee Croshaw from Zero Punctuation, I think it's the Cho mythos it's called. He did 3 games. It's like 5 Days a Stranger, I think it's 6 Days a Skeptic, and 7 Days a Sacrifice are the 3 in this. And it's just a really good old-fashioned haunted house, well-written graphic adventure, where, you know, everyone's trapped in this house. You play a guy called Trilby who's a thief, I think. It's a long time ago now.
So harking back to like Maniac Mansion and things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And every time you wake up, like the 5 titular days, someone else has died and they start to suspect you and you don't know who to trust. But it's just narrative, just like solving puzzles, getting through the day. You see something weird you've got to solve, and then that evening something will happen. And it was just really good, like a really solid graphic adventure. And again, it was free at the time. And I love free horror games that are, you know, a few hours long, like small development team, boom, done, dead.
Yeah.
Literally boom, done, dead.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to play that. That sounds good.
Oh.
I do like a graphic adventure. Graphic adventures do lend themselves quite nicely to. You are quaffing that drink.
I'm thirsty and it's cider. It's the perfect combo.
Yeah, graphic adventures really lend themselves to that. They're kind of timeless in a way. Like you could still just about play something like Maniac Mansion, but you could definitely play something like Day of the Tentacle, or you know.
And I thought you were going to say the graphic adventure genre really lends itself to horror, because of course it's pretty much a purely narrative experience. The puzzles are there to kind of get a little bit of slight interaction, but if it's well written, you can just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, and
without having to pick up the pad and do quick time events. I look at you, Telltale Games.
And also the graphics, well, graphic adventures generally, the graphics don't really date as such, because they can be quite, even the
evocative.
Earliest ones, yeah, quite evocative. You play like Loom, you know, from what, 89 or
Sorry, Bob and Threadbare.
Yeah, that's the one. But even that looks really cool. Like, it's not like it's so unplayably bad. It's just, it looks cool. It's got atmosphere to it. So yeah, it's kind of timeless. But I think that's probably just a pixel art thing more than anything.
Yeah, it's really timeless in a pixel art.
My final one on my top 5. So I mentioned that Bioshock starts off with the perfect balance of like horror and gunplay sort of thing, and then it gradually went more and more kind of action based and more kind of just social commentary in the background. But with the Dead Space series, the perfect balance was found in the second one. So Dead Space 2 is the real key to the door here, because Dead Space 1 was kind of like a schlocky B-movie splatter horror, which was fine. It was pretty good. The third one is not very good, and that because it just ended up being like a kind of just
Online co-op.
well,
Not
there was a bit.
split-screen co-op?
There was a lot of. It just turned into kind of just relentless
Shooting.
and it was just like you just get hordes and hordes, and
Much like Fear 3 did.
yeah, and it was just it was much more. It seemed much more catering towards
The online shooter
Call of
crowd.
Duty,
Yeah.
or something like that. But the second one had the perfect balance, I think, and it introduced one of my favourite ever enemies in a game called the Stalker. I had to look up what it was called because I couldn't remember, but it was you first see it in this I don't know where you are, like it's almost like a Colosseum type thing, or a theatre or something like that, but some huge hallway, and it's like circular, and it's got these columns around it, and the Stalker hunts in packs. So of course, you're not told any of this, so you don't know what to expect. So you see one ahead of you, and they're like weird, almost like velociraptor type things with no arms, I think, and you'll see one ahead of you, kind of like preparing to like run at you, but of course, like the velociraptor, they do that in order to
Distract you
because then they come in from the sides, and I don't know how they did it, but it was like even when you're kind of cottoned onto their kind of game, even then it was still scary, and you couldn't outthink them somehow. Maybe if I played it again, it would be really obvious, but I remember that being a classic gaming moment, much like the bit with the nursery in the game, because if you remember, there's a bit with
and then like things moving around slightly.
Yeah,
Nothing actually happens, but it's just slightly you're walking through it.
Yeah, it was almost like a moment of respite in a way, but it was also like really creepy. It was like a real moment of calm before.
It also has Dead Space 2 as one of my favourite jump scares. Just when you go into that big open library, and you kind of, I think it might be just before the nursery, and you're kind of wandering through, and there's like a staircase in front of you, and you're kind of thinking, oh, got to be what's up here. And as you walk into this room, this massive thing drops in front of you, slams and screams into your face. I dropped the controller. I was not expecting it, because I was so used to like cutscenes of like probably reaching for a drink or fairness of wine, pushing forward, and it happened. I was like, Jesus Christ! Nice. So yeah.
I do like the first two Dead Space games are very good. The ending of the first Dead Space, which is a kind of a jump scare. And it's too much of a spoiler to give it away, but I don't know if you remember it. But when you're kind of escaping, something happens, and it's like.
Yes, I do remember this. Yeah.
But I found it really, really, genuinely terrifying as a jump scare, but also like
really sad.
Yeah, really impactful and sad, because you know that after all of that, he's escaped and everything, he's not escaped the real horror in his mind, sort of thing. So it's going to follow him wherever he goes. Yeah. So good games. First two good games. Third one, don't bother.
Yeah, I didn't even play the third one because I saw that it was co-op, online only. Well, that's me never playing that then.
Yeah, it wasn't the best.
So are we on to the hidden gems now?
Yeah, we can go on to the hidden gems.
Oh, you haven't got any other?
No
top
more.
fives?
No more than 5 in the top 5.
So yeah, well, I've cheated with 2 because I've got like a modern one and a retro one. So the
I think I'll find
if I were to be so bold, Beckett by The Secret Experiment.
Is this the retro or the modern?
This is the modern one. I played it. I had it for review through Games Freeze. I think it was last year now, and it was amazing. It's a really I'm looking because I sent an email to Simon Meek, just the guy who developed it, who is The Secret Experiment, just to say this is really good. I liked it, Simon. And he said he sent me this. I've got they're around here somewhere, like a set of cards. I'll go on to that in a minute. So Beckett is you play. It's very much. Samuel Beckett, the playwright, that kind of really dark sort of brooding. It's that sort of. I think it's named after that, but it reminds me of like.
Is he the Waiting for Godot guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know what to expect. So it's this really fractured game with like a really sort of Burroughs-esque, Bukowskian sort of worldview. It's just he is, it's just an old man who's just in this kind of Orwellian society, and your job is to just find out where this retired failed actress's son has gone missing, and it's not so much about the story, it's just about how out of his depth he is and just his mindset. So the game is told in a really sort of fractured way where each character is like will just be like a close up of an eye, but they'll be represented as like discs on almost as like a microfiche. So it's kind of when you click on like
how else would you represent a human being?
when you go into, it's all viewed top down and it's all quite stylized. So when you click on like you're in his apartment, it'll be
Sorry, I was just looking at Sonic the Hedgehog pinball game up there, which is so different to what you're talking about. It's like you're talking about an embittered old man trying to find an actress's son. And I'm like, this Sonic the Hedgehog, supersonic pinball.
I wonder how many D batteries that takes. Four. It's four.
Right.
Two D, two C. One for the lights, one for the vibrations.
Wow.
So yeah, it's kind of when you click on like a new area, it's like a microfiche just sort of goes, and then it'll move across and like when your character talks to someone, the text will come up and it'll just be all sound effects, abstract sound effects. Like when you talk to like someone on a construction site, it'll be the sound of a drill, and when you talk to the actress, it'll be like kisses. Like,
really creepy.
And when he talks, it's like.
But that's quite genius in a way because it's single developer sort of thing. And obviously he's not got the budget to get actors and stuff, so he's always working within his limitations, but artistically
totally embracing them.
Yeah.
Totally embracing them. There's a bit in Observer which really reminded me of. I don't know if you remember an Observer, which I'm assuming on the list, where when you go to the apartments.
Yes.
And
you go to many apartments.
And there's like those weird like looping gifs.
Yeah.
On the things. That's the Beckett style. They took that from Beckett. I'm pretty sure they did. So yeah, you're playing the game, and of course it's not, and it becomes not so much about solving like the mystery of this where this kid has gone. It's just about experiencing this really dark, twisted world. And there's a and it got to the point where I was taking screenshots of the text because it was so well written. And there was one bit where you go to a hospital. And you visit like the head of the hospital and you're sat. It describes going in and there's a bird on his desk that's just covered in spiders. and the bird is like eating the spiders, but like the more are constantly being released into the cage and this like constant circle of death, and there's just this I read it and I was sitting on my own and I just read the text and looked at the image and just said, Jesus Christ. Like, and it's like that all the way through, and the ending's like really kind of abstract as well. But it really affected me, and I can remember it really well because when people say, when I get into conversations about it, especially indie games, when people say, "Oh, I don't play an indie game," Beckett snaps to mind. So I think that is something that a studio would never ever release. And it's brilliant.
It couldn't be like because a lot of indie games are kind of simplified versions of AA or AAA games, right?
Yeah.
But that's something which could never be a AAA game. It's like,
and some people play it and think this isn't even really a game. It is more like an abstract experiment thing,
which is fine.
Yeah.
What stops it from being in the top 5? Oh, is it just it's sheer obscurity?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah. I was thinking that why wasn't, but it was the hidden gem. It was just to bring a bit of, if anyone does see this, then Beckett is a sure. And it's again, it's not even a horror. It's just horrifying.
Yeah, I suppose it's not the kind of thing that you go back to a lot, like some of the other games.
But I will talk about it until I'm dead.
You'd experience it and then go back to in like 5 or 10 years' time and think, oh yeah, that was amazing.
One other thing about Simon Meek, The Secret Experiment, he sent me these cards. I can't remember what it was called, but it's these cards that there's like 30 cards, and they have really abstract piece of information on it, and they're meant to be shuffled. Obviously, depending on the order you read them in, the story comes out differently in your head. Like it'll be about a woman who's like talking, and it's all really abstract, as if she's come out of like a marriage where she's being beaten, but then the next card will, and you don't know. It's like all the time frames are messed. It's a really clever idea, and it was pretty surprisingly effective. I was going to give them to you actually, but they're in here somewhere. Faye's put them somewhere.
You can still give them to me.
I will give them to you, good old Simon Meek. So yeah, I'll find out what that's called, and I'll put the link in as well. It's just escaped me for the moment. So yeah, that's my real hidden gem, because I think Beckett is one of the best games I've played in the last 5-6 years.
Good. My hidden gem is the Count Lucanor.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of this one.
This is
hang on, no, I have heard of this one. This is a Metroidvania.
No, this is a top-down puzzle adventure, a puzzle horror adventure. Probably only about 4 or 5 hours long, maybe. I don't know.
It's too long. It's too long.
Really,
it needs to be under 30 minutes.
It's got these gorgeous blocky pixel art graphics. quite stylized. It's got quite basic gameplay. You really just go around. There's a bit of sneaking around. It's not terribly difficult, but it's just the atmosphere is really uniquely amazing. Like, one of the sounds which is quite often repeated in it, with certain enemies, is this kind of distorted sound of a goat kind of moaning. It's like, and it's really, really disturbing, and like it never stops being disturbing, and the game's got a really wicked sense of humour. Like, even at the end, it's like really got a really amusingly like acerbic sense of humour, and it's just really nice, quite simple game where you go to a castle, you solve a bunch of puzzles, you sneak around some really creepy.
What is it? The Count? I'm going to play this. The
Count Lucanor. I mean, I wouldn't pay a lot for it because it's brief, simple, but it's a hidden gem because it's the kind of thing that it's the kind of thing you probably have on your wish list but never actually buy. But I would say definitely give it a go.
Okay.
It's really
What is
cool.
it on sort of Steam? Is it?
It's on Steam. It's on Switch.
I'll probably play it.
I played it on Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I picked it up for like £3 or something. So it's well worth it. But yeah, it's just really creepy atmosphere, but combined with like really cutesy top-down Zelda-like graphics, and which makes it even better.
It's a little bit odd.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that a lot.
My hidden gem, retro hidden gem, and is Gunfighter on the Commodore 64, which isn't.
But that's not a horror game, Brit.
No, it's not. But if it was reskinned, so this is a niche one because it's made by Atlantis Software, by Mike Love, obviously, who I did try to Tony Love, who I tried to contact for an interview, but it's such a generic name. It's just hard to find out who he is because. So in Gunfighter, you play the sheriff of a town. The townsfolk have all left. It's like a side-on sort of 2.5D area, and there's like 18 screens, and you've got 6 bullets in your gun that you can reload at when you go into the sheriff's office. You come back out, and you've got to collect.
So you have to go into the sheriff's office.
Yeah, so you have 6 bullets. If you shoot them and they're gone, then you have to go back, and it's like reloads, and you go back out again.
So you've got nothing to defend yourself
So
with on the way back.
it's basically. I think it was like a precursor to survival horror. I think it's the first survival horror game because if you think about it, there's no music in the game. It's just the footsteps of the sheriff. Just like that's all you hear, and you have there are sort of funny names like like Billy the Kiddo or like Clint Westwood, that kind of thing. And it doesn't sound like a horror game, but it's so dark. It's just like completely silent apart from your footsteps. And there's these 18 screens. You're going around looking for like 30 deeds to the houses of the town to save the town. And you go, and they're randomly generated. So you're going round, and it'll say,
early procedural generation.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood has been seen near the stables, or he's searching for you by the bar. And where the horror elements come into it, sorry, my nose is really itching, I think I need to trim my moustache, is in when you're walking around, they'll just pop on screen as like a jump scare, so they'll just catch up with you and start shooting. But when they shoot at you, because the frame rate is the game struggles, it drops to like a really primitive version of slow motion, and then you've only got 3 lives. So if you're walking along, you could get like 29 Ds. You just need to find the last one in one of these screens in this town, and someone will walk on screen and just go because you don't have any invincibility at all. It's like
it could
dead.
be just an insta death.
Yeah. So the game is really weirdly tense. And I think I finished it for the first time when you were there because I was showing you and I happened to finish it and I was really pleased.
I do remember playing it actually.
My nose is itching.
It was quite a harrowing experience, and not just games from that era were quite harrowing anyway because they were so difficult. But that one, it had a really weird atmosphere to it because of course it's like just you in this town and the only other people there really are there to kill you.
Yes.
And you don't know where they're going to come from.
When you kill them, it goes through, like, say, there's 10 guys, like there's an Indian chief or whatever, and when you kill the last one, it just loops back around, so you're just constantly being attacked in this, like, really dusty ghost town, but it's presented, the artwork is, like, really 80s kind of Beano cartoony sort of, gun, but the game is actually, like, I find it weirdly stressful.
Yeah.
So, and the fact you could just be killed and just to go back the title screen at any time. So I think it's one of the first.
All games are horror games.
Yeah, so that's Gunfighter on the Commodore 64. There are other versions of the Commodore 64s where you need to go because of course it had the washed out browns and blues for graphics. Good.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that's Hidden Gems done it. Now it's just on to you've got like honourable mentions. I will stop scratching my nose at some point.
I was just going to mention a few that didn't make the cut, but are good, really good horror games. Alan Wake. which has some repetitive gameplay. It's have you played Alan Wake at all?
My brother gave it's all right there.
Oh, there you go.
If you take it out,
It's a special edition, isn't it?
yeah, my brother kindly gave me his Xbox and a load of his Xbox 360 games.
Oh, that's tasty. Is that an actual novel?
No,
Oh, it's meant to look like a novel.
but it's pretty cool. So, will that fit the shelf? Yes.
Yes, solid that is.
I love it when someone mentions a game and it's right there.
Yeah. So you haven't played it.
No.
It's so it's very much inspired by Stephen King. So it's like
That's just crap.
well, the idea is he goes to this kind of remote house to write a novel, and what he's writing kind of mixes with reality, so that kind of thing. Now, the basic gameplay is to do with like you have a torch, because the darkness is coming at you, sort of thing, and the enemies are represented by kind of darkness, and you have to zap them with a torch and then shoot them, sort of thing. So you have to take their kind of defenses away. So the gameplay is a little bit repetitive, but it's got a really cool atmosphere, a bit Twin Peaksy, a bit Stephen King, any of Stephen King's like things. So it's all kind of like, I guess it's set in Maine or something.
Yeah.
But it's got, and the writing is actually, because you see
really?
excerpts from
his
the actual book, and they're actually pretty well written. It's pretty good. They then did American Nightmare, which was okay, but it's much more arcadey, and it had this annoying conceit where you're doing the same series of levels over and over again. Slight changes each time. You're learning more about the story, and I thought this is a bit cheap actually. And by the time I got to the third run through, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this.
Oh, okay.
But so that wasn't great.
Do you know what? I've got the Xbox 360 set up in my bedroom, so
You should play it. It's really cool. It's really, really atmospheric.
I'm gonna do that. Let's go in there.
Yeah, it's a good Halloween game. That's an amazing box as well.
Yeah, actually, what is in there? I'm just holding it up because he gave it to me like a.
That's so cool.
It's signed by him as well. Look.
Fictional character, but
So yeah, it's got the limited collector's edition, the Alan Wake files, and whatever this is.
art. No, that's the disc.
Soundtrack and a bonus disc.
Good.
That's a full on.
Yeah.
Right, let's go next door. That's happening. That is because Faye gets up like 5:30 in the morning, so she goes to bed at 10. And I'm going to bed at 1. And I don't even let my mum know. So this is happening. That's going to be. I'm glad you mentioned that actually, because.
Yeah, good game. Doom 3, have you bought it yet? Yeah, you did, didn't you?
I have. I started playing it, but then I started doing other stuff. I basically made the mistake, and I'm sure you've all done this, because the Xbox 360 was in my bedroom, I started a load of games on it. One I accidentally started on it was Dragon Age 1, 2, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Skyrim again. And I just thought, this is ridiculous.
Quick arcade games.
And then last night I chucked on Arkham Origins, and I said, but just stick with the game, for God's sake. So it's going to be Alan Wake now over the holiday season.
Yeah, it is quite gripping. The gameplay's simple, but it's fun enough to take you through. So Doom 3, good game, good horror game. Probably the most horror of the Doom series, really.
Well, because it's just not frantic shooting, is it?
I
Constantly.
mean, they tried some stuff with the original Doom, but it was probably too basic to really have that element. Resident Evil 7, I want to mention, because it's really cool. Like it's a really good, genuinely scary horror game for the first half, before it turns into just something really generic. In fact, the second half is a lot more like the what's it called, Revelations. Do you ever play those ones? The chaptered ones, which were just a bit action based. They're okay. They're just pretty generic. But the first half of Resident Evil 7 is genuinely like a lot of it's quite scripted, but it's genuinely like pretty messed up.
I've got it on VR. I haven't played it yet. In fact, we've got a friend, Damien, who tracked it on VR and said he couldn't do it because it was too terrifying.
I can imagine
so
the
we
first
beat him
few
up for being
scenes,
a girl.
like because a lot of the first section is very much, I guess it's based on like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something. So it's that really, really disturbing apocalyptic vision of the breakdown of a family unit sort of thing, and it's just like living in such squalor and just having such horrific
like your mum
characters. Yeah, pretty much. Not that bad. I mean,
I mean they had a tough time.
It's got to get a certificate at the end of the day. I think it's the best Resident Evil game, but then I don't really like the Resident Evil games, so
Yeah, for me, 2 was the keeper. And I haven't played the remake of 2.
Yeah, I played the demo because I think you had like half hour to play it. It was fun. It's fun.
A timed demo in the re-release.
Yeah.
That's where it was in the original. That's quite cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
that's a nice
Yeah.
little touch back to it. I didn't know that.
Another honourable mention, which I'm sure you've got something to talk about, is Zombie U.
Yeah.
It has now got a PC release, I think. I don't know, it may be even PS4 and stuff.
Yeah, it is on PS4, I think, yeah.
And just called Zombie, obviously. But that was cool. First person perspective.
Hitting a zombie in the head with a cricket bat in that game was... It almost made me wince.
Yeah.
It was that kind of... And it's really buzzing.
It was harrowing coming up against them and having to, like... If there was more than, like, maybe 2, you were like, okay, this is going to be a struggle. And it was really cool, nice looking, atmospheric.
And set in London, like a really dingy London. Yeah, dingy London.
And, it didn't occur to me that, of course, it's an update of the game Zombie, which was on... I know it was on the Amiga.
Yeah, I'm assuming the Atari ST as well.
Yeah. Because I loved the original Zombie, which
Yeah,
was very much more akin
It's
to
really
like,
Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah,
So it was like you're in a shopping mall, and it was like kind of eye of the beholder perspective. So you'd like move along, and but what I remember is in the original Zombies, they would walk side to side, these zombies, and if you could aim the cursor and get a headshot, you could kill them instantly. But if you took too long and didn't kill them, they'd come at you, sort of thing. But one feature of that, which I actually forgot, was that if you died, then your zombie would then be walking around when you restarted. Cool. And of course that happens in Zombie U as well, so it's definitely a kind of remake, if you like. But that's what's really cool about Zombie U, is that, you die, and you can, like, it introduces you to the character at the start, and it says, like, oh, you're a stockbroker or whatever, and you'll look completely different, and then you'll kind of get attached to that character and work through a lot. Then you'll die, and... So you'll go, and then you'll be reborn as a different character, and go and find your kind of zombie, and
I have to kill it.
You have to kill it. Have to kill your former self, sort of thing. Really cool idea. And what made this the Wii U version even better than the other versions was the fact that when you had
the backpack,
when you use your backpack, it switched to the Wii U controller. So of course you were rifling around
on the screen.
here.
You can just see yourself rummaging.
Yeah. So on the screen it's like zombies are coming at you, and you're rifling around your backpack down here. It's really cool.
Yeah,
really
cool
nice idea.
Again,
probably only about 6-7 hours long, I guess. But yeah.
Too long.
It's really cool. It's a weird. Yeah, it's an early example of, like, Ubisoft just really wanted to, in those early days, support the Wii U, but of course then it started flagging, so it's quite a unique game in that regard.
Yeah.
And it has a classic moment when you're in the school. Don't know if you remember that, but
do you fall through the floorboards or something?
Yeah, and it's like, it's really creepy anyway. So because it's a school sort of thing at night, and you can just hear this constant creaking, and you're like, what's going on? And then you think you've done it, and you're just on the way out. But then, of course, the whole floor just completely collapses underneath you, and then suddenly you're downstairs.
And it's like the only time there's a supernatural force in the game, isn't it? Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah, what else is on the little honourable mentions list? Oh, I've got one more, I think, on here. And that is Half-Life 2, specifically Ravenholm.
Ravenholm, yes.
Because the legend goes that Half-Life 2... Well, Half-Life 2 was going to be a survival horror game. I don't know whether it's true or not, but apparently Ravenholm was like almost like the that was the last
right.
That was the thing, that was kind of what it was going to be based around, but actually ended up just being a chapter, which probably explains why it's so different to the rest of the game.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely terrifying, Ravenholm, because it's so well designed in the way that, and it introduces those horrible black spider things, which were...
We both love spiders.
They were like 4-legged spider things, and they would hiss, and then they'd screech, and then they'd leap at you, and if they hit you, they wouldn't kill you, they'd just take you down to 1 health, so they'd make you extremely vulnerable, and they were so scary, and even if you're up on a roof somewhere, they would be like trying to leap up and get you. And
yeah, constantly trying to get to you.
Yeah, they're just really aggressive. So that was really cool, and it was just a really, really nice gothic kind of. It's almost like Eastern European kind of setting.
Block. So.
Yeah, it was almost like kind of Budapest or something like that. It looked really cool. Yeah, and so that single chapter is still better than most horror games.
This is true. So, shall I do a couple of... I've got quite a few.
Oh, right, okay.
So,
sure,
not
sure.
like full reviews of them, but just...
Yeah.
So, I've got Phantasmagoria as another good FMV game. Really good. And, of course, female protagonist, which is cool. But when you read about it now, it focuses on, like, there's a rape scene in it. It's not, like, a really brutal... It's not unpleasant, obviously, there's all rape scenes. Should be and are. But it's more about, like, this... Her husband is clearly getting affected by this spirit. They've bought this house. And she's going into the town trying to work out how to stop this evil force that's taken over her husband. And it's just... It goes back to it was owned by, like, this just weird cultist. And it's just... It was a really good example of FMV being used properly. Probably cost a fortune to make. And I think it's like 6
I remember
CDs.
it being a pretty big deal at the time.
I think I've got it and the sequel. The sequel is interesting because I believe it's one of the first games you play like an openly gay character. But
Few and far between.
not too many games about that, which is cool. But of course, it didn't have the impact of the first one, and the second was more contemporary, like a guy in an office, and it's a dark story. But the first one is a typical kind of haunted house thing, you know. Sanitarium, which is one of my favourite horror games of all time, just outside the top 5.
Isometric?
Yes, isometric. Stasis was which I was going to mention as well. Stasis, which was released on a PC a few years ago, was a kind of a spiritual successor. But the story of Sanitarium is really cool because you get in a car accident, and the whole game, I don't know if you remember, you're in like kind of gown, and you're covered in masks, and with covered in bandages, and you have no idea, and you go through these 4 kind of weird. Sort of areas in your mind, but you always every now and again after you get past a certain point, you'll hear like the real world, like your wife call it, like speaking to you in your coma and stuff, and it was just really, really dark and psychological. And my brother still can't play it to this day because the first stage in it used to scare him because it was bear in mind he would have been like 8 or 9, and it was you go into this town and all the kids are like mutating and like twisting. And it turns out they're kind of turning into plants. So when they talk, they kind of... And it's really weird because they're kind of morphing, and you have to work out what's causing it, and he hated it. Condemned, which is still a really good...
First game I played on 360.
First game, and it looks okay now. It's still... I get and that thing about the combat's really guttural in it, really physical. And I never finished it because... I never got involved enough in the story to want to finish it, but I did love the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it was one of those games I just wish they just held back a bit on the combat to make it more weighty when it did happen. But it ended up feeling a bit too action-packed for its own good.
Pretty sure they would, if nowadays, would perhaps make it more narrative-focused. I mean, it came at a time when it really was... games were very action-based when you think about it. Because it would have been just as... The PS2 era was over, and the PS3 era, well, it was Xbox 360, I think, exclusive maybe?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, and like, that was just before they started making the really narrative-focused games, so I wonder if they made it now, it wouldn't be, more...
There's nothing wrong in horror games, there's nothing wrong with just like wandering around with a torch in buzzing places, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with it.
As long as they have to
Silent
hide.
Hill made a whole franchise out of it, so...
Obscure 1 and 2 is another good horror game if you fancy it. And on Steam, Obscure 1 and 2, they're kind of basically multiplayer. I'm going to have to blow my nose.
I suppose that means I'm going to have to blow my brains out. Good movie. Elvira. Quite a funny black comedy. Good sense of humour. And weirdly kind of feminist in tone. Like, it's almost like, although obviously she's a big boobed bimbo, like actually a lot of the humour is at the expense of quite sad, desperate men. So it's a good movie.
Obscure 1 and 2, which is effectively like a local single screen 2-player game of Resident Evil. And it was really cool because you had all these different characters. The first one is probably the darker game, but the second one, Obscure 2, although it's more of a sort of faculty, without Josh Hartnett good on his hair, faculty sort of...
Faculty is quite a good movie, but Josh Hartnett's hair...
Is it? It's,
oh my goodness.
well, it's like...
It's swept forward, and he's got like a really, really severe like fringe at the front, but then it's like ruffled up at the back, like sticking up there, like deliberately. It's like, what are you doing?
I'm not
Why?
brushing his hair.
Like you're basically saying, like I'm a really cool character, but my mum cuts my hair.
Yeah, and I haven't brushed it. I've just gone this in the mist a bit. So yeah, the Obscure 2 leans more towards the sort of faculty, kids in a school sort of thing. And it's a little bit more teen horror than the first one, which is a bit darker. But the second one has got a 60 FPS remaster on Steam, and it's just cool to play. Static camera. It's got problems with the camera angles and stuff, but it's such an unusual genre of game for it to be 2 players. So it stands out, and I played it with Chris a few months ago, and it still is really fun.
Good.
Do you want to do one? Because I've just got a list. I'm going to be.
I was just going to blast through a list really quickly, so you might as well finish. Do a couple more.
Go on then. So Haunting Ground, one of my brother's favourite horror games on the PS2.
I don't think I've heard of that.
Really? It's really weird. You play a game. I think your name might be Rose. She turns up at this house and goes inside, and she befriends this dog, and you can't attack any enemies. There's only 3 enemies in the entire game. One of them is the gardener, who comes after you with these sort of shears, and it's kind of like a Lenny from A Mice and Men character, where he just wants to hug you. He sees you pretty. He's obviously a little bit simple, but doesn't know his own strength. And what you can do is you can set the dog on them, and the dog obviously mauls them for a bit until they get it off, and they come for you, and you have to hide. But
It's just a distraction, almost.
yeah, but it's 8 hours long, not 25. I look at you, Alien Isolation. And when you hide, it's really cool because you can hide under a bed, and they'll come in, and you'll see like the feet kind of shifting around, and then all of a sudden they might just suddenly drop to the knees, and the face is like right up against the screen. They're like reaching for you under the bed and pulling you out, and they obviously just kill you in one hit sort of thing. But the enemies are buzzing. Like the first one is that big guy. I can't remember his name now, but yeah, he's the big guy after you. And then when you get to the second part of the game, it's all in this big mansion. It's like a woman who's like obsessed with your beauty, and she smashes a mirror, and she's going after you with like a shard of glass that she's picked up from the mirror.
Blimey.
And the third one is an old man who's in a wheelchair, and he's like, "Ugh." And then when in the first cutscene when he's introduced, he falls out the wheelchair, and he spends the entire game crawling after you, but really fast, and it's horrible. He's kind of making this like weird like laughing cackle, and when you see him, he's sort of, and then he's like really quickly scuttling towards you, but like dragging his legs.
Oh my god.
And of course that means it's harder to hide from him because he's always floor level. So
bloody hell.
it's a dark game, and it had a really cool ending. It was just really dreamy sort of atmosphere to it. So
that sounds cool.
that was a PS2 exclusive, and I think because it's Capcom, it's a bit more expensive now. But if you can get that, boom. And the last one before you do a couple is Enclosure, which is almost like an 8-bit graphical style game from about 8 to 10 years ago, in the same vein as 5 Days of Stranger, but set in the Antarctic like The Thing.
Yeah.
And it's just about the breakdown. And I remember really loving it, but I cannot find it online, and I need to play it again. I was going to play it this year for Halloween, but I need to dig it out. So that was a cool one as well.
I was just going to quickly run through a list of other fun horror-themed games.
Okay.
And just with a very quick review. Observer from Bloober Team.
Yes, yeah.
Who did Layers of Fear, which I didn't like. But this is better because there's slightly more to do than there is in Layers of Fear. Cyberpunk setting, first-person adventure, very narrative focused. Rutger Hauer.
Thank you.
Is probably his last performance in anything.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I would suggest Castlevania, especially Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And obviously they are Metroidvania games. Decap Attack from on the Mega Drive.
Pull it
Which is
down.
up here somewhere.
Pull it down.
Let's drag this bad boy out. Where is it?
It's going to be there.
Dynamite Heady.
There it is, just by Desert
Decap
Strike.
Attack. There it is. Okay. Out you come. This is a really cool game. Is that going to be in view? Yes.
Here we go.
Decap Attack. It's not as good as Dynamite Heady, but it's got a really cool like cartoony kind of horror atmosphere to it.
Where you mix potions in the pause screen, don't you?
Yeah, and of course your weapon is just yanking a head off and throwing it at enemies, but it pings back.
Oh, yeah, and your name is obviously Chuck D. Head.
Because you
Good.
chuck the head. Dead Island,
Nice, yeah.
good game. Good
And
game.
Dead Island Riptide.
Yeah.
Is this the same thing?
And they're quite good multiplayer if you can get online because it's not split screen.
And of course, Steve Bloom putting on, I think it's like a South African accent, or New Zealand. It's like,
Dying Light, which I think was by the same people who did Dead Island.
I want to say yes, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it, but it's the same kind of thing. So open world, but this time it's probably more accomplished. Generally, it's like very much open world, but with zombies and stuff like that, and it's pretty cool. The Metro games are quite well regarded.
You didn't like them, did you?
I personally think they're a little bit overrated in the same way that the new Wolfenstein games are overrated. I think they're quite standard. If you get down to the core gameplay, they're pretty standard shooters. But yeah, they are atmospheric. They're like kind of like the non-cerebral stalker games, really.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of my. This is just a pure oversight on my part because I was terrified by some parts of Shadow of Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And Call of Pripyat and stuff. But yeah, the stalker games were just horrible. Yeah. Amazingly horrible games.
Among the Sleep, which is where you play a first-person game, kind of physics-based, I guess. You play a toddler, just exploring the place and trying to get back to his mum, but also trying to run away from a really bad mum, sort of thing.
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a bit janky, but it's a cool idea, and I like the way that you run along and you just occasionally fall over because you're a toddler. That's cool.
Oh, Little Nightmares. I don't know if that's mentioned, but I've got that.
Oh, yeah,
it's £4 at the moment on
that's
PSN,
pretty good.
so I've got that.
Pretty good. That's got a really disturbing character design, isn't it?
Almost like claymation-y
like
sort of.
clay. Yeah, I was going to say like clay or something. The Luigi's Mansion games are very good, and of course the new one is out on October the 31st.
Nice. Are you going to buy that by any chance, Ruben?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I might just let it slip me by. Of course, I'm going to buy it. It looks like it's got some really cool game modes on it as well, and there's co-op and that, so good. Looking forward to that. And it, in a way, highlights I think a kind of lack of good cartoony horror games.
Yeah.
They tend to be extremely dark horror games, but
nothing in the mid-ground sort of thing.
No, not really, not so much. The Medieval remake I think is just out now. I played the demo and it reminded me of how clunky the original was, to be honest.
Is it Sir Daniel Fortescue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't really updated the gameplay much to it, so it's still quite
a little bit.
It looks really nice, and it's again, that's quite a cool like cartoony horror game actually, but I don't know, it is clunky. It feels very PS1 in the hands, and there's The Mummy,
which was weirdly good. The game,
yeah, because the film is it's bad. It's the very
it just sank.
It's the first bad Tom Cruise movie, and you know he's been around for so long, and it had to happen sometime, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure he went into it with good intentions, but that's a bad movie. And but the game is a pretty straightforward Metroidvania, to be fair, but it's got some cool weapons, and it's very playable. I mean, it doesn't do anything amazing, but it's a good Metroidvania, and yeah. And the final one I had on this little list was A Hat in Time, which is not a horror game. However, I was just in the kind of zone for thinking about cartoon horror games, and because there's so few, I was thinking, well, what have we got really? And A Hat in Time has some good spooky levels, like forest levels and stuff like that, and it's got a really good sense of humour, and it's just wanted to highlight that it's a really good game as well, because it reminds me of Super Mario Sunshine. It's almost Nintendo quality, and it's like constant barrage of ideas.
You were talking about cartoony Ghouls and Ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
There's another one on the list, but that's a good, obviously, but that's a seminal.
Easy as well, so you know, just pick it up, play.
Blindingly difficult. Pick it up, play, blow your brains out.
Blindingly difficult, and then you have to do it all again when you get to the end.
I have no mouth and I must scream, which is just a sentence I'm saying and not a game. Yeah, that was based on the Harlan Ellison short story, and of course Harlan Ellison voices AM, the supercomputer in the game.
I have this on Steam, but I haven't played it yet.
I didn't know it was on Steam. It's always evaded me, and I really want to play it.
It's in a Humble Bundle, which I probably should have linked to you, given that you just said that you really want it. You don't have it.
Really handy. You can just have to gift me the game when you... Can that happen?
You can come around and play it. You can come around and watch me play it.
Through a mirror.
You can come around and sit downstairs while I play it.
Upstairs and shout in a soundproof room, but have your phone next to you and just like narrate what's happening on the screen.
Yeah, but I could be lying.
Okay, I'm stuck. Click, click, click. I'm stuck. Yeah, that fancy. And my brother sent me this one because it is true. I said good like horror, good Halloween games, and he said Gabriel Knight 1 and 2, not 3, as walking around a sunny French village isn't particularly scary. And it tickled me because the first one is a graphic adventure. It's Roberta Williams. The first one is a graphic adventure all about voodoo. The second one is...
Walking around a sunny French village isn't that scary.
It's weird, isn't it?
It sounds more like Before Sunset, really, with Ethan Hawke and Judy Delpy.
The second one is Giving Out the Beast Within, which introduced the term Schartenjäger, which always sticks with me. Where you play like a Gabriel, obviously the actor FMV, so it's just about werewolves, and I love werewolves. So that's really cool. And then the third one is about vampires. And Gabriel Knight, because it's, yes, early 3D PC games. It's...
the best era of 3D gaming.
It's the only good thing about it is Gabriel Knight is voiced by Tim Curry, but the game is so clunky and goes so long without anything actually really happening beyond just a gentle game.
Stroll.
Oh yeah, it's just tedious. Friday the 13th game.
Yeah.
That is a good game. That is a good game, and it's especially for fans of the franchise, especially the cabin.
It's hilarious. Like, my experience of that game is Did you bring your Switch over to mine? Yeah, you brought your Switch over to mine, and
I will be the first person. I don't play this game as it was intended.
it was hilarious because of course it's like an online thing where like it's a what do you call it, an asymmetric online thing. So three of you or four of you are
there's like 8 counsellors and one Jason Voorhees.
and one Jason Voorhees. So Jason Voorhees, if you're Jason Voorhees, you get all these special powers, right? But you are playing a counsellor, and so what you're going to do is complete tasks in order to ensure that you can get away from the camp, sort of thing, in safety. No, stuff like, filling the car with gasoline and stuff like that.
Using calling the authorities.
Like, you're really meant to work together as a team.
It's not all play it.
And so, what did you do for it?
What I do, and what I always do, and what I always will do when I play the Friday the 13th game, is go into the first house, hide somewhere, and sit and wait to be killed. I love it. I love nothing more than like sitting looking through a porthole and just like seeing Jason killing everyone else and thinking, oh, come on, I'm over here. Because it feels like you would be in a, what I mean?
That is genuinely what the experience would be like of being there.
And too terrified to do anything.
Yeah, because that's real. You wouldn't really be running around like if there was this supernatural resurrected demon man stalking you.
Yeah,
and like what you'd do is you'd hide in a cupboard and hope for the best.
And that's what
Especially
I do.
if there was a timer ticking down for the police to come.
There's just something about...
It was so tense, and it was hilarious. Just sitting there, to be fair, sitting there drinking booze as well.
Yes.
But just watching, like, just holding down one button to peer out of, like,
every now and again holding your breath when he goes past. But it's so funny, because you see that the other counsellors can see you in there, and they're, like, obviously doing motions to come out and help me. No. And you stay in there, and then, of course, they get killed, and Jason will come in and look around, and then he'll bugger off a little bit, and you think, oh my god, you almost think, I don't care if I die or not, because that inevitable, when the counter goes down and you have to run to the exit, is just as fun. I don't care if I live or die in that game, I just love hiding in a cupboard and looking. That's all I want to do.
Which is amazing, considering we slag off Alien Isolation at every opportunity. and yet
this is more fun.
And yet you're playing this game which isn't even meant to be played that way, and yet you're doing Alien Isolation in it.
Yeah, I'm Alien Isolationing it. And on that top as well, the first horror game I ever played, the 8-bit version of Friday the 13th, which my Commodore games are out in the hallway, but it came on a thriller pack. So there's about 8 games on there, and it's ridiculous because I bought it again the other day, and it was like, you got Friday the 13th, which is, it got slated at the time, but it's really cool now because it's done from like a pseudo top-down, top-side perspective as they did in those days. And the only safe place is a church, and the level starts off, and you've got to find which of the counsellors is Jason Voorhees. And as you're walking around, he will sometimes turn, if you go too near them, he'll turn from one of the counsellors into Jason Voorhees, and the music goes really doomy, like dum dum, and he'll just chase you mercilessly until you get back to the church, and you just have to wait for him to go away again. And he used to scare me all the time as a kid, because I'd be like walking up to these people and just waiting for him to turn up.
Waiting to turn.
Waiting to turn my werewolf script that I'm working on. So yeah, it was that the original 8-bit version is still good. And finally, have you got more? I guess.
I've got nothing more.
Oh, you've got
actually.
nothing?
Like,
Okay.
Literally nothing. They're all the games I've ever played.
I've got a few more to go through. So the other one is Dark Fear, which I'm just going to mention because it was the first game I ever reviewed for a website.
Dark Fear. That sounds like it's a slightly clunky title.
Yes, it's a slightly clunky game, and it's all like hand drawn. It's like a Steam game that's like 80p or whatever. But I remember finding it weirdly endearing, and it was quite fun. It was just like an adventure sort of static image puzzle game. But I remember it being quite cool in a light-hearted way.
Yeah.
So check that out, Dark Fear. Unforgiving and Northern Hymn, which was probably the closest I've come to walking simulator that I've enjoyed. In that it's you'd like it, because it's all Scandinavian, Norse, Viking-y sort of stuff.
I do like that stuff. I don't like walking simulators though. Oh yeah, I do remember. I have got some other
Oh yeah, go on.
items on there, but it was more about whinging about walking simulators. So you crack on.
It's just this. You're basically just wandering through like a forest and some mines, and there's just a narration, and you just every now and again see like there's like a frost giant or like some sort of ogre there, and it sort of chases you through this forest, and there's some set pieces and the scripted parts which are clearly the best, as they always are in these sort of games, as opposed to just random nonsense.
Because the gameplay isn't fun.
And it's just really foggy. Just walking through it, it's one of those games where, you know, you're walking along down a train track towards a dark tunnel, and then you hear like a sort of and you turn around, and you can just see this shaggy head like through the trees alongside you, and you're completely exposed. You're thinking, is he just going to rush over here, or am I okay? And it was just the atmosphere was it was really rich and foggy, and I really liked that. So Scanner Sombre, which
that was
yeah,
good.
which
I
everyone
enjoyed
hated
that.
apart from us apparently, which is really cool.
Really?
Yeah, apparently so.
Because I played that when
over mine.
over yours. I came around and he said, "Oh, check this out," and I just played through the whole thing. It was in like a couple of hours, sort of thing. And well, you can describe it because this is.
It's kind of it's set totally in like an underground cave. It's pitch black, and you've got this sort of scanner that you use, this hand scanner, and it just makes a sort of like a really gentle.
Yeah.
And you draw your surroundings in colour.
Yeah.
So it's like goes from green to red, and if it's green,
but
it's far away, and if it's red, it's close to you.
All kind of in dots, so it's never
Yeah.
completely fully formed.
Yeah.
It's just almost
You
like
kind of colour in your
it's almost
surroundings.
like
Kind of like the white swan.
It's
or
just
the white-
bouncing off. It's like it's bouncing off the scenery and almost creating a virtual version of what
Where
is
you
actually
are.
under your
Yeah.
feet because it's so dark down there. It's really cool. It's a really cool idea.
And you sort of go through it, and as you're working through the tunnels, it's just a really neat idea. Which again, hour or two, that's all it needs.
Yeah.
But then every now and again, you'll be like drawing around you to see where you've got to go next, and then all of a sudden there'll be like a humanoid shape.
Yeah.
It just stands there, and you think, right, okie dokie. And then of course you'll walk around, and turn around, and it's moved a bit closer, and there's no combat. It's just making your way through, and the story's quite cool, and how it starts at the end again is very cool.
It's quite distressing actually that aspect.
Yeah. So it's just a really neat horror game, and again,
Scanner Sombre is it called?
yeah, Scanner Sombre. The Darkside. You talking about games that are suitable for all. The Darkside Detective is a really light-hearted graphic adventure, really easy to do, kind of Ghostbusters-y in its approach. But you just play like a typical hardball detective with like a goofy sidekick who's like a beat cop.
Yeah.
And really blocky, stylized pixel graphics, just going around these short stories, self-contained episodes, just solving simple puzzles and solving the mysteries. And it's like, it'll be a possession or something, or there'll be like a vampire or something. But it's all done in like a light-hearted, tongue-in-cheek way. Darkside Detective, really cheap on Steam, definitely a good crack, fun for the family. One isn't for the family, is The Static Speaks by Name and the sequel, the next game by the same guy, The Bucket Detective. Have you played these? The Static Speaks by Name is just really quietly distressing. You play. It's like an Unreal Engine sort of thing, so it's like 3D first person, and you just wake up and you have a list of things to do, and it's like it's something like a wake up, eat breakfast, feed the fish, look at the painting, and then it's like, don't look at him. It's something like the last one is like an odd, okay, and you go through and he's obsessed with this painting of the two. It'd be a cool thing to have actually, like these two palm trees, this like kind of 80s sort of styled neon painting, And as you walk around this apartment, just like doing these menial tasks, you realise it's kind of everywhere. It's like a screensaver. It's his wallpaper. It's on his bed, and he's obsessed with it. And there's a little twist at the end, and there's a really nice little end. But you should play this. It's a free game. And the same guy did a game called The Bucket Detective, which is about a guy who's writing a book and he's infiltrating a cult. But he's doing it with like this really weirdly positive mindset. Like he'll do anything, and it's just a series of puzzles. And he'll do anything to get stuff for his book, and ends up doing like really horrible things. And the cult, he ends up kind of like cutting parts of himself off and doing these awful child murders just to get stuff for his book. But of course, you're making the choices to do this, so you're kind of forced into these awful situations. So again, a couple of hours each, and the static speaks my name. When that finished, when the ending happened, and the kind of it sort of went out of itself to show what it was all about, I thought, that's an amazing idea, and that is dark. That is dark. So yeah, the end is basically you're viewing the last few minutes of someone before the suicide, and then you go out and into the static, and then you'll see another name, and it goes into it, and then the sort of thing is you'll be then seeing that person in the last moment of their life.
That sounds cool. Before we go on, I don't know whether, because I'm not sure whether it's on your list or not, but Stories Untold, because I don't think we've mentioned this.
Yes, it is on there.
Oh yes, yeah, got it. Good. Well, we might as well mention it now.
Yeah, you've said it now.
That's a cool little game, and it is a little game because it probably takes what, an
It's
hour,
a good
maybe?
game, and it's a patchy game.
Yeah, I mean certain, because it's a series of sub games really, mini games really. The first one is probably maybe the best, like a text adventure, and is so clever, and such a scary idea.
Yeah.
That it's just really, really cool. You just have to play it. The other ones tend to be more. I like how mundane everything is. So you're stuck in like this Antarctic kind of facility on your own, and you're having to work out how some piece of machinery works, and
like in a really boring way, looking at.
You've got this old manual which is like just printed off on some paper, and it's like really bad like copy, and you've got a machine in front of you, and you basically have to work out how to use the machine in order, and you're following these instructions. It's quite well done though, so it's not just like really tedious. You're not just like literally reading through a whole manual. It makes it pretty obvious, but it's cool the way that it's this mysterious.
It does that thing of making it seem initially really like the kind in Observation, which is another game everyone should play, where it seems really technical and really dry, but then when you actually work out what it is, it's actually like really simplified in this denseness.
Yeah,
which is just good design, really.
And it's just really cool. It's a really cool mystery. The whole thing is just really well done. So, and that's probably like I think I picked up for like £3 or something.
Yeah, sitting here a few quid.
Yeah, so that's well worth it. Stories Untold.
So yeah, the Distraint. Did you ever play that?
No.
That is a game that's just, I say horror, it's just sad. Like you play a guy who, I think Distraint, the term, means to like evict someone from their home, effectively, because they can't afford to live there for whatever reason. It's not that, but that's the basic gist of it. So you play a guy who has to go into this woman's house and evict her, and he just has a massive crisis of conscience that affects his 2D side-on game that massively just affects his personality and his ability to cope, and he just sort of dips into depression in a way reminiscent of The Cat Lady. So that's just a really nice dark psychological horror game, again, a few hours long.
Nice.
Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth is a deeply, deeply, deeply flawed game on the Xbox. But when it's good, it's good. And the atmosphere of just again, it's one of those things when you're walking around the town, not really know what's going on, and people saying horrible things to you when these like weird, slightly off-kilter designs, that fish-eyed, Lovecraftian thing.
Has there been a definitive Lovecraft game?
No, there was.
Or are they all deeply flawed?
They're all well-meaning but deeply flawed. Like Canarium is the closest I can think of one that's just very Lovecrafty, which is the same sort of story as this, the Shadow over Innsmouth, I think it's called. And Canarium is an underground cult, and you go through it. It's a bit of a walking simulator with some puzzles thrown in, but even that isn't ideal, but it's probably the best of the bunch. But then Dark Corners of the Earth has got some amazingly dark moments in it, but of course then it just relies on clunky combat and
so often do.
And just hiding from people, and hiding in an Xbox game. So it's not quite there, and it just
so the physics aren't quite there even.
It just needs to be a good story. And the thing on the PS2, which I think was on the Xbox as well, but the conceit of the thing is it's like the film. It's a continuation of the film. There's one of the
You
doctors.
quite like the film, don't you?
It's one of my favourite horror films of all time, actually. We'll be
Yeah.
up there with Nightbraid.
Which is coming out.
As the Cabal cut.
Yeah, it's been delivered on Monday.
Can I watch it with you? Can I watch
Okay,
it with
yes,
you?
I suppose so.
Literally waited years for it. Yeah, the Thing. So the main conceit of the Thing is you're going around. It's very much like the film. You turn up after the events of the film, so everything's kind of ruined, and you're going through and attacking enemies and stuff. But everything's really scarce. Like health packs are scarce, ammunition is scarce, and you get people who can help you, who like you to pick up other parts of the team that are dropped and scatter in the weather, but you don't know if they are the Thing or not, so, and they have nothing. They'll say like if they've got no ammo or a gun, they can't help you in combat, and they'll just get killed and turn into the Thing, which makes it worse because each enemy's quite tough. So you have to it's like a risk and reward thing. You've only got a few blood tests to give, and my brother always reminds me of this one where I was with this guy for like an hour, going around, and I did a blood test and he wasn't a Thing, and then we went to this cabin and this guy was keeping us at bay with a flamethrower, and he's like, oh, you've got to prove you're not the Thing, so I needed to find another blood test. And I thought, oh my god, if he was like with me, it would make it so much easier, because he's got a flamethrower and it's going to completely annihilate them. So I spent like an hour finding a blood test, came back, gave it to him, did the test in front of him, and then I thought, oh, are you the Thing though? So I thought right, this guy, the guy I'm with, I'll give him some cool stuff and then give this guy like a crap gun. So I gave the other guy the flamethrower, gave him the crap gun as a tester, turned around, and then the bloke I'd been with for an hour just turned into the Thing, and I lost everything. And it was just a massive, and when he turned, it was like a genuine, no! Like, you traitorous bastard. And it was one of the moments in horror that I remember thinking, oh my god, I was tricked, and it just made the game much more fun, and like everyone you meet, you're like, I don't trust you, I don't trust anyone. So yeah, it's very true to the film, very cool, and yearns for a remake, yearns for a PS4 remake. Observation I've mentioned, which is the game After Stories Untold, the same people.
Oh right, yeah.
Really good. You're basically playing a. I'm really enjoying this, by the way. It's alright, like talking horror. You play effectively. It's called SAM, like a space station's artificial intelligence, and it kicks in after the station's been reset and all the crew have gone missing, apart from this one woman who's played by Welsh actress actually, or the voice is by Welsh actress, and she kind of guides you and tells you to do these things. And again, it does this thing in Stories Untold where you know, it's like you've got to reset the power, and you think, oh, this is boring, isn't it? But then you look at like really dense paperwork and all these, and then when you realise what it's actually quite simple. Yeah. So it gives that illusion of like complexity. Which is
the illusion of mundanity.
Yeah, it's
fourth novel.
It's the best King Crimson album.
Maybe you could share your observations of that game.
So yeah, Observation, really good, modern, really pretty game as well. Quiet, set in space, really exquisite sound design, and just a really gruff Scottish captain, sci-fi elements, deep sci-fi elements, and like a really full-on, heavy-duty story. Good. So that was that, and I'm on to the last three now. This next one has got a special place in my heart because it was the first game I played through with Faye, and it's called The Lost Crown, and it is dated now. It was released in 2007, around the same time as the next one, Scratches. And The Lost Crown is set in Cornwall. So what it is sort of
natural setting.
It's like a photographic, it's almost like a photograph of certain, like a pub, or like a coastal path, or some grasslands, but then altered so it's sort of little artificial features around it. It's all in black and white with splashes of colour, and it's a graphic adventure. Like we're just gentle. It's like I think it was rated 12 when it was released, so it's kind of a gentle. The supernatural elements are pretty gentle, and you play like a guy called Nigel Danvers who just escaped from this facility, and people seem to be after him, but in a really casual way. They're like, "Oh, we got to find him. We got to track him down," and then you just spend a few days wandering around Cornwall. So then there's no.
Isn't that the name of Wonder Woman? Or Nigel Danvers.
Carol Danvers, and isn't that's Captain Marvel?
Oh yeah, Captain Marvel. That's it. Yeah. What's Wonder Woman?
Shut up, DC dude.
What's Wonder Woman's name then?
Alison Moyet.
No, you idiot! You're thinking of She-Hulk. It's actually Sue Lawley. Susan
Quattro. Okay. So yeah, The Last Crown, what's really... Jonathan Boakes, the guy who made The Last Crown, does this really cool thing where... And we're thinking about doing it next year. He gives you, like, all the places that the game was shot at, all the images, so you can kind of do a tour of the game.
That's
around
so cool.
Lou and Polperro in Cornwall. It's really beautiful. But the pub has obviously got its name changed.
You were imbued?
No, but apparently if you take all your clothes off, you'll be nude imbued. So, yeah, The Lost Crown is a really nice graphic adventure, quite sort of soft and gentle, but just nice, really nice casual... It's a glass of wine and popcorn kind of game, you know, just a few hours, boom, boom, boom. Scratches is one I played at the same time, and that was probably my introduction to... I don't want to say walking simulators, but that kind of level of... where it's sort of a very casual approach to gameplay, and you're in a haunted house, and like there's no... a couple of sneaky little jump scares, but it's almost stuff that's inferred is what's scaring the atmosphere, as opposed to what you're seeing. Which was good for one game. But when a genre spun off from it, it just becomes tedious. Yeah. And the last one I've got on you, just because I can, is Splatterhouse 2 on the Mega Drive.
What?
The music in that game.
The, what kind of... Is that top-down?
You don't know what Splatterhouse 2 is?
I don't think I played it. It's got to be here somewhere.
It is there somewhere. Corner, isn't it? Super Thunderblade. Super Highlight. Splatterhouse 2 is kind of a... It's a 2D... like sort of side-scrolling, I say brawler. There's only a few enemies in each level, but it's very much influenced by Jason Voorhees. So you play a guy.
Yeah.
Hockey mask.
Because I've seen the hockey mask. I think I've seen the cover of the game, but never actually the game itself.
It's really cool. Really, really cool. They did 3. I think the first one was only released on like the Turbo Graphics 16. The second one was released on the Mega Drive, and then the third one was only released in Japan on the Genesis, not in Europe. So it's an awkward trilogy to get. But Splatterhouse 2 is the easiest one to get, and I think is regarded as the best in the series. But it's just got this really intense sort of doomy music, and just a gory for the 16-bit era, and boss battles, and it's really tough. But it's a good solid 16-bit horror game. Which is me done. That's all the ones there are probably dozens more we could talk about, but that's all I wanted to cover for the ones that mean a lot to me anyway.
So when I was making some notes for this particular episode, I wrote down some of my kind of the games that I hadn't enjoyed.
Oh, okay.
And I came to a realisation that they have something in common, is that they're walking simulators.
Right, yeah.
Or at least very slow-paced horror games. Because I wrote down Alien Isolation. Don't know if we mentioned that before. Outlast. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Layers of Fear. Amnesia and Soma. But I know that you're quite keen on like the Amnesia.
I liked that. No, I didn't like the other two. The first two. I liked Amnesia Machine for Pigs, and I did like Soma. Yeah. But I wish I'd played it when they removed all the enemies.
Right.
And released it. That would have been even better.
Because I realised that actually it's not really to do with those. I can't look at those games objectively in any way and say these are bad elements or something. It's just I realised that it's just that genre. Like whether it was a horror game or whether it was like a drama or whatever kind of.
The thing is, you've listed like all those games there. When really, with the walking simulator as a genre, you only need to play one or two like really well regarded ones, and you kind of got what you need. Yeah. And you listing 5 shows you just you
definitely got whether you enjoy it or not. Now, because I know it must be the genre that turns me off, because something like Alien Isolation, which because I love the original Alien, and I absolutely love the production design of Alien Isolation. The way that it was almost like they took Ridley Scott's original and H.R. Geiger and I guess Sid Mead as well. I don't know whether he had
he did Civilization, didn't he? Oh, Sid
Mead. But they took what Ridley Scott had created and almost like carried it on and like expanded it in a really cool way, and like imagine what the rest of the ship would look like the Nostromo, and so I absolutely loved the design. I love the idea of just walking around the place, and I know there is a mod where you can just turn off the alien, but then you don't really have a game at all. And am I really going to be up for just wandering around
for 25 hours?
I'm not sure. I guess what I really wish for is an RPG or something like that in that world, or perhaps an action game based in that world with something more akin to Aliens, for example, but not Colonial Marines. So it is definitely the genre, because a lot of these games are beautifully made, and like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture is a really cool concept and like setting, because it's like set in some boring English town.
No, I thought it was set in like a really busy New York at like rush hour.
No, it's actually a really sleepy English village. But I just found myself wandering around aimlessly and occasionally coming across and being forced to listen to like some little snatch of narrative, and I suppose you're meant to piece it together, but I wasn't having fun, so I didn't care enough. And this is a problem. It's just I just don't have the patience for walking simulators, so therefore that's a real issue. And I love horror, but I just think a lot of these games would work better and have worked better as movies. For example, Alien, for example, because I mean, and I guess this comes on to the problem with horror games generally. The conceptual problem with horror games generally is that like a horror film is something, or a book, I guess, they're linear experiences. So in a horror film, okay, you could turn it off, but then essentially you're not watching it anymore.
You're not engaging with it.
You but if you watch a film, then you're forced into the next scene. In a way, you're completely at the mercy of the filmmaker about where they decide the camera's going to go, or what sound they decide to play you, or whatever. Like, you've got no control over that, and you're sort of helpless, and that puts you in a vulnerable position anyway. But I always find that in like a lot of horror games, especially like the walking simulators, the slower kind of style, where it's almost mimicking the pace and tension of a horror movie, is that because I'm in control, I can take away that tension by like something as simple as just noticing a bad like kind of texture or something like that, or going so far as to kind of break the game to the extent that like in Outlast the thing will be chasing after me and I managed to get him stuck behind a bed sort of thing, and it was just laughable. So I think there was no threat anymore. It was just silly. It's just sort of like running against the bed. It's like, okay, this is just stupid now.
I am more of a fan. I'm more of a fan of walking simulators. I've played a lot of them, and the two polar things I would give, going off what you've just said, are when I played Amnesia Machine for Pigs, which isn't a game where you get stuck. It's all about moving forwards. It's quite clear where you've got to go, and there were some really nice ideas in that. Like I remember the dawn on you slowly. Like I remember working through it, and when you hear sounds behind the wall, and there's like weird pounding and doors slamming in front of you, and thinking Jesus. And then there's a bit where you get to like this bathroom, and then you open it and you realise you go into the wall cavity, and you kind of slightly double back on yourself, but looking through all these one-way mirrors, and you realise that you've just been watched, and there's like loads of food and drinks out where they've obviously been watching you for a long time. You're like, this is quite buzzing, and then the game ultimately obviously reveals itself, and I really liked it. On the flip side of that coin, I played The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, and the problem I had in that was it's effectively an open world in which you move very slowly. So what I found was when I was walking forwards and the narration was happening and these scripted events were happening, it was cool, but for too long. I was walking around a field and nothing was happening, and then sometimes I'd happen across something, and I would think, well, I'm not really invested in this anymore, because there's no structure to this narrative, there's no sense of tension building, because I'm just happening across things and I'm just bored, so I stopped playing it. And I think a good walking simulator has to be, and it's not a really nice name for the genre, it is dismissive in and of itself as a title of a genre, but with something like Stoma, or when you're just walking around, like you said with Alien Isolation, enjoying the atmosphere and being led through the narrative, that's fine. But what breaks that is any kind of combat, because it's always clunky and awful and boils down to just hiding. Or when it's too open world and expansive, and you just end up just wandering around aimlessly. So it's a very tough genre to just be good.
Well, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture was the same. Like, in terms of like the openness of it, as this kind of, it's almost an artificial openness, really, because you're really meant to go to set points around the place.
So just have it so you walk through it. Because
and then of course then you're getting and then you're narrowing it down to something more linear, and then inevitably you end up just, okay, if I don't really enjoy the gameplay and it needs to be tighter narratively, that's when you're like, well, and then you come to the conclusion it should be a film.
Yeah.
Because that's the other problem, is that a lot of these games last a long time. Like, Alien Isolation.
Last a long time.
Wow. Alien Isolation, I beat it in like 22 hours, and that was pretty much speed running it, to be honest, because I had on the easiest difficulty mode just to get through it. So you know, it's a 25-hour game, and that's ridiculous compared with like the experience that like Ellen Ripley went through on the original Nostromo. I mean, she had like 2 or 3 encounters with the alien, but you can't have a game where you have 2 or 3 encounters with the alien
over 25
hours, because of course it's a 2-hour movie, so therefore it's paced differently.
Yeah.
And so it really minimises the impact by spreading that level of slow tension over that length of time.
Moving away from walking simulators and hiding in cupboard simulators, I was noticing when I was making my list, going through it, that a lot of the games that I really like and find really memorable are 2 hours or less, because they're almost experiments in horror or fear or terror that are kind of bite-sized, like Stories Untold or Distraint or 5 Days a Stranger, because you can just dip into them, and that because it's so compact, if it's a really neat idea, then it works for an hour or two.
Maybe it can only work for an hour or two.
Yeah,
that's the thing, because of the nature of the horror experience. Like, if you have a game which is just fun, and it's like you're not really meant to feel anything beyond just the sheer enjoyment of playing it, you can play it for hours, sort of thing, and it's kind of mindless. If you are expected to feel a level of tension or fear of what might jump out at you next, sort of thing, then that's only sustainable over a couple of hours, really.
Yeah.
You can't really sustain that over...
Like a constant state of rigid mortal tension for 25 hours over a period of sessions on a game. It doesn't work.
No, I don't think it's sort of incompatible with the way that gaming works, for me anyway. Yeah.
So, what would you say then, to wrap this up? Because, I mean, it's only been 5 minutes. What would you say
It should have been about an hour and a half.
Is your favourite... What would you say would be the game you would refer someone to say, this is a good example of horror, or, you know, like, that could only be explored in the gaming medium?
Hellblade.
Nice.
100%, because it's not just an effective horror experience, but also it can only work as a video game. Because it's the experience, the progression is based on your twisted perception of the world. That's what the puzzles are based around. That's what the progression is based around, having to shift the world in order to see it from the right perspective, literally see it from the right perspective. I mean, it couldn't work in another medium. You couldn't really... It'd be too esoteric to describe in a book. It would be too boring to put in a film. But as a way of, like, I think the reason why it's one of my favourite games is because it uses the medium in a way that it can only work in this medium in order to tell the story.
Did you wear headphones when you played it?
What's that?
Did you wear headphones?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to play this game, aren't I? If it's your favourite horror game of all time, I haven't played it. It's almost... I feel like I've done our friendship a disservice by not...
You have, really. I mean, in a way, it's a betrayal of our love.
Are we frozen in time?
It's a freeze frame.
Oh.
If you to point to a quintessential horror game, what would it be? Like the one that represents what games can do.
What games can do?
What games can do in that genre? Last of Us? I notice we haven't mentioned The Last of Us 2.
I don't care about it. But you, I'm not sure you didn't like it, and yet you're playing the remaster. I saw you on Twitter. I saw you on the other day on.
I played it for an hour, and then I remember why I don't like it.
Oh.
But well, let's not go into that. Although that's practically a walking simulator.
I'm looking at these, and do you know what? If I was
scouring the list,
if I was to, I think the game on here I would recommend to everyone would be the Cat Lady, because I think it's got the thing about being, it's earthy. It's it's relatable.
Yeah.
And it feels oddly universal, and yet it's got genuinely horrific scenes in it, as well as monumentally sad scenes. It basically made me run the gamut of my emotions, because some parts of it are really funny as well.
Yeah.
So I would say the Cat Lady, because when I played that game, it made me realise how good, genuinely affecting horror games can be.
Mm.
So I would say the Cat Lady.
Yes. Yeah, I know. That's
And you haven't played that, so that's a betrayal of our friendship.
We can we can meet in cyberspace through these two games.
Calm down, lawnmower man.
We could just meet in real life, actually.
Talk about. So yeah, let us know. Shut up, Ribbit. Let us know in the comments. The issue here is not the question, but what the answer might not be.
In German.
I think in the comments you should all tell us what your favourite horror games are, and if you can, tell us the puzzles in Silent Hill 3, because I'm really intrigued by how literature based they are.
If you just list all of Shakespeare's works, that will probably work as well.
I've spent the last week thinking that I've really missed out a couple of key games.
Haunted, if you like. Well, the Notion.
Or Haunting, starring Poltergeist. That was a good game.
What was the game on Mega Drive where...
Haunting, starring Poltergeist.
Was that the one...
Where you can jump in paintings and scare the families?
Yes, that's the one. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's my top one game.
I thought we were going to end this. I thought we were going to end this on the non-freeze frame, but we've carried on a bit. So I think we should just end it by saying, mine is the thing. What is your favourite horror film of all time? The Shining.
Probably The Shining, yes. Almost certainly The Shining.
Is there a scene in that film where Jack Nicholson is looking out the window and Shelley Duvall's behind him, and he's looking out the window and it's raining, and she's where you are, so he's kind of like this, looking out the window, and she's sitting behind him looking, and he goes, hey, it's coming down in torrents, like when I'm using views.
No, there isn't a scene like that.
You haven't seen the director's cut?
There is a scene where it's the same scene, and he just, hey, tell you, look at the sun, shining it is.
And then he says, hey, Shelley, how's Robert? Duvall.
Oh, right, I thought you were going with, hey, Shelley, didn't you write Frankenstein?
No, because that's
Mary Shelley.
Mary Shelley, yeah.
None of these things happen in the film.
No. Does he sing when he's looking at his son? Does he ever sing, "Oh, Danny boy"? And that's why the film's so long. It's because he really holds a wavering bit.
Lingering on a single note. Yeah, that is in the director's cut, yeah.
Because it's weird, isn't it, when he goes in The Shining and he goes into the toilet and he meets Paul O'Grady, dressed up as Lily Savage.
Delbert Grady.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, Delbert Grady, he was the one who was in those cartoon strips in The Office, wasn't he? Oh, that's Dilbert. What would you say was the worst horror game you've ever played?
Hello Neighbour.
Oh,
Oh my God, we have got
Any
this far without mentioning Hello Neighbour.
Okay, this will be
well, I think you'll find
Hello Neighbour in and of itself is crap.
It's total rubbish.
Yeah.
In every conceivable respect.
It was so bad when I played it, and everything about it was so bad that I wanted you to feel how I felt. And when you're playing something,
And then I did, and I resented you.
for it was bad. It's bad, and it is bad.
Like, we think it's bad, but everyone else thinks it's really cool or anything. Like, all the reviews say it's terrible. All of the user reviews say it's terrible, and yet somehow it still has a life. It's like
Ported
this
to
undead
PS4.
creature.
It's ported to Switch, and why? Who was playing it?
I honestly think your dad could program a better game than Hello Neighbour.
The thought of my father, because you're forgetting.
Just give him a C++ for dummies.
You're
It's
forgetting that I don't know if you've met my father, but he is a hollowed out skeleton that is controlled by my mother behind him on a stepladder with like loads of puppet string that she's glued to his.
Right.
So like, and she puts on his voice, but weirdly, the voice she puts on for him is her voice.
It's weird. You always said he was a bit distant, didn't you?
Yeah, but then I just shuffled my chair a little bit closer to him.
Yeah. And then he could really loom over you. With your mother's cracked voice.
Oh, that's horrible. Oh, fantastic.
Speaking of horror, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez. Is it Christmas already? We've been here that long.
That's it, really, isn't it?